and welcome to Riffs Magazine. We can be found on the web at www.riffs.com. My name is Jason J. Rock Houston, and it's my great pleasure and honor to be speaking with the legendary Derek Sherinian. Now, Derek, we're talking to you today about, you have a new solo CD coming out called The Vortex, which I understand is coming out July 1st. So, could you talk a little bit about the new CD? And I understand it's 8 tracks, and you got a lot of great special guests on it.
Well, Jason, first of all, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Yeah. And I'm very excited about The Vortex. It's coming out in about a week now, on July 1st. And again, my collaborator Simon Phillips on drums and on co-writing, and he mixes and is a huge part of my solo records. But he and I put together The Vortex over the last couple of years. And it sounds amazing. We're really stoked on it. We have a lot of guests that have returned from our past records, like Steve Lukather, Joe Bonamassa, Zach Wilde. But this is the first time that we've had Michael Schenker and Nuno Betancourt perform on one of our
Now, it seems like Simon Phillips, as you said, your collaborator, and it sounds like he's a big part of all these records that you do. So, what was the point, when you knew that you and him that had that kind of chemistry?
Oh, the first record, the first day where we got together on my Inertia record in the year 2000. And, I mean, he's always been my favorite drummer, even before I met him.
Yeah.
And so I was a little bit starstruck on that first jam. But we have a playing chemistry for sure, and Simon digs it. And we just, when we get together, we write some really cool stuff. And between the two of us, we know a lot of people, players.
Yeah.
And fill it out accordingly, and the music is very adventurous. It's unfiltered when we're writing. We're not trying to write hit songs or whatever.
Yeah,
we just write what we're feeling, and at the end of the day, we're covering a lot of ground, and it requires a lot of different kind of guitar players in order to get the musical statement across.
And let me ask you, so since you guys got that kind of chemistry, I was kind of curious. When you were recording this new album, The Vortex, were you guys in the same studio together?
Well, we were in the same studio writing it, and then Simon cuts his drums by himself, and there's a couple songs where he had the bass players in there with him. But it's easier for him on this kind of music. It's so intricate.
Yeah. The
most important thing is getting Simon's tracks, and then we overdub afterwards. Yeah,
and I'm not a musician myself, so I was kind of curious, as far as when you go to make an album like this, because this is all instrumental, right?
Yes.
So, a lot of times when you're adding your keyboards to a typical song that has vocals, you kind of have an idea, the listener does, kind of what the song's about. But I would imagine creating instrumental music like this, it's much more about the feeling, your emotions. Am I correct?
Well, the emotions should be in both vocal and instrumental music, but the one difference is that since there's no vocal line there or melody line, which is the main focus for most people when they listen to a song, you need to fill that void, or unless it's elevator music and you're just playing with no melody. But so one of the instruments or both need to carry that space where the vocals would have been. And so that's where the challenge is to A, come up with great melody lines, and then B, have a style on your instrument that emotes like a vocalist. And that's like one of the reasons why people like Jeff Beck are so great, because they can really make it sing like a vocalist, and you don't even miss the vocals.
Yeah. Wow. So I was curious, that's one of the things I've always loved about any of the music you've been involved with, solo-wise or any of other projects you've been on, is, I'm sure you've heard this like me for years, where people say, keyboards suck and they don't belong in rock music. I totally disagree for a lot of reasons. I mean, there's guys like you, Don Airy, John Lord, which we'll talk a little bit about later, but I mean, some of my favorite all-time music, you go back to the 70s, bands like Deep Purple, Boston, and even on music like this, I was checking out the title track Vortex, and I mean, it's not what people would consider, just a nice piano melody. I mean, this stuff really rocks, and so you really kind of, I think, with your music, show people just how important the keyboard is to music, or just how, what you can do with a keyboard.
Oh, well, thank you very much. The keyboards are the tough in a rock band, they're the least favorite instrument, and they can really ruin a rock band, or they could make a band classic.
Yeah,
and
I think so.
It's a very slippery slope, and I've always been aware of that coming up, and I've always placed the utmost importance on, having great organic sounds that are going to stand the test of time. No cheese keys, no Tinkerbell sounds, no things where you're going to listen to it 10 years in the future and go, God, I wish I didn't use that sound, So I use Hammond organ, Moog, Rhodes, Mellotron, all the classic stuff, and I play aggressively and with balls, and I listen to, like, my favorite keyboard players like Jan Hammer, John Lord. Those guys were very aggressive in their approach. There's no, corny stuff going on. And so I kind of keep that same spirit and even take it up a notch, and I incorporate my great influences of all of the great guitar players like Van Halen, Randy Rhoads, Yngwie, and I add that weapon into my arsenal, like in my solos, on top of all the John Lord and all that stuff. So,
I mean, you can go back to
I'm like a best of all of our favorite guys and guitar players in one stop shop.
I mean, you even go back to somebody like Jerry Lee Lewis from the 50s. I mean, he was probably the first one of the piano players to kind of really rock it out,
Yeah, he was great. Fantastic.
Yeah, and you mentioned like you had Steve Stevens play on the album, and I understand that you actually wrote a song with him. So, and that's something you've been wanting to do for a while. How cool is that?
Say it again. With who?
Steve Stevens.
Oh yeah, Steve Stevens is awesome. Steve's been on 3 of my records now, dating back to 2004, and not only playing but co-writing. He's just fantastic, and we also have a great chemistry with Steve, Simon, and I, and we co-wrote 2 songs on this record, the title track, the Vortex, and then a song called Seven Seas, which is more jazzy. Yeah. And I can't say enough good stuff about Steve. He's a great player. Sure is.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you play on Billy Idol's Christmas album?
I sure did. Yes. And Steve and I played in Billy Idol together for 10 years. So 12 years.
I gotta tell people. I urge people to check that out, because I got that last Christmas, and I tell you, it was the most rocking Christmas tunes I ever heard.
Yeah, that's a great album. I put it on every holiday season.
Yeah, and then you also had you mentioned Michael Schenker, and I know he's another one of your longtime heroes, and that you recently played on his album. So let's talk about him playing on yours.
Well, I played on his album, the Immortal album, in 2020, and that was awesome for me because he is a big hero of mine. But he was really happy with my playing, and after I turned my tracks in, his manager called me back and said, Michael really loves your playing and he's really happy with the tracks, and thank you so much. How much do we owe you? And I said, listen, I can't charge Michael Schenker. Give me a break. And I go, but if he wants to play on my next album that I'm making now, I would love to have him, and I'll write a song to honor him. And he said, of course, we'd love to do it. So that's how Michael ended up on this record, on Dicobra, which I think sounds amazing. It has Simon Phillips, who was on the original MSG1 album with Michael.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. And Tony Franklin on bass, and then we have strings and sitar player, and it's killer sounding. Have you heard it?
I haven't heard. I just heard the one track, but I tell you, just based on the Vortex, I'm going to order an album, because I believe it comes out next week. So I'm looking very forward to getting that. I mean, and that's the thing. Just haven't heard the one track, but I've heard everything you've ever done throughout your career. So I have no doubt it's going to be good, if you know what I mean.
Oh, thank you. Well, no, it is going to be. It's really killer. And Simon and I put a lot into the composition and production, and every note is there for a reason, and so we're really stoked on it. And I think anyone that likes my music or Simon's music or great instrumental tracks will love this record.
And of course, this is very keyboard oriented, because you're a great keyboard player that you are. But it's kind of interesting that the main 2 guys that are driving most of the music is a keyboard player and a drummer, and then you get these guest players that come on. So, like, when you decide you want to have Zach Wilde play on a track, do you write a track that you say, oh yeah, I could easily see Zach doing this?
Well, yeah, sometimes we'll write for a specific player. Like, for instance, with Michael, I knew he was going to be playing, so we wrote specifically for him. On the Steve Stevens track, he co-wrote the song, so he, turned in the first section, so that kind of, he's obviously going to be playing on that.
Yeah, yeah.
And then there's times where we'll write it, and then if, each of these guys are fantastic.
Oh, sure.
Great in their own way, but they have fortes where they have specialties in what they do, and so the songs really work themselves out. If it's going to be something totally insane technically, where it's going to require a lot of lines and stuff like that, Bumblefoot is the obvious choice for that.
Okay.
Because he's the only one that can play them, so you go to him. And then if it's going to be really singing melodic lines, you go to Lukather, so each of those guys, if it's going to be a nylon string, go to El Di Meola. So
you
just have to, it's like a movie director or a casting agent. You're casting your movie, and you have to get the right actors and the right players and the right songs.
And so that leads me to my next question. So when you have a Zakk Wylde or a Nuno or Michael Schenker come in, do you kind of let them just freestyle? I imagine you let them hear the track that this is going to be for, but do you say, hey, Michael, just kind of do your thing, like let him write the track, or?
Well, no, like there's certain parts that they need to play, like the main riff or whatever, or if there's a melody line, but during the solo, it's all open canvas for them. I want them to do their thing, 100%, for sure.
And it's kind of interesting you brought up Eddie Van Halen, because typically when people think of Eddie Van Halen, we think what a great guitar player he was, but around 1984, he started getting more and more into keyboards, and he on the later Van Halen albums, especially the Sammy albums, keyboards were a very huge part of the Van Halen sound.
Yeah, it was for sure on that album. He was really leaning into it hard. And as a keyboard player and as a Van Halen fan, I wasn't a big fan of that. I didn't want to hear him play keyboards. I wanted to hear him play guitar. An artist is going to do what they want to do. And if he was getting enjoyment and he was writing great riffs, hell, he wrote Jump. That's a massive song.
Keyboard riff,
massive hit song that he wrote on an instrument that's not his primary instrument.
Oh, yeah.
That's pretty badass. And on top of that patch, like, you look in synthesizers in the factory sounds, they'll have 1984 or Jump, the OB8 sound, the OBXA sound. And so he really, as he did in the guitar industry, he kind of changed the keyboard industry a little bit, or he, made a ripple for sure.
So I was curious, Derek, when you were starting out in music, were you always a keyboard player? Did you learn to play other instruments as well?
No, I started as a keyboardist.
Yeah, that's pretty good. And now let's talk about any plans to tour behind the new album, do any live shows or even one-off shows?
Well, we have a couple shows booked with Simon, and Bumblefoot's going to play guitar with us, which I'm excited about. One in Ventura, California on August 29th. And then we're playing a festival in Armenia, which I'm excited about, on September 6th. And we're looking at some possible touring options after that. And so I hope we could put that all together, because this music is so killer, and these players are so great, and the fact that Bumblefoot and Simon want to go out and play, we need to bring this music to the people.
I think so. Yeah. And now I got to ask you, because I just last week purchased the new Whitesnake Greatest Hits CD. It's a bunch of their hits kind of remixed and stuff, and you're a big part of that. Now,
absolutely, yes.
Talk a little bit about that.
Well, David Coverdale called me maybe, when was it? It had to be maybe
a year ago?
8 years ago, something like that.
Wow.
To play on some tracks. He was doing reissues of some of his classic albums, and he wanted just better sounding keyboards. He wanted to get rid of all the Tinkerbell stuff that was done during the 80s, and so I put on Hammond organ. He wanted the John Lord, the crunch. So it started with that first record, Restless Heart, and then he just started sending me a deluge of all these tracks to play on, and so to date I've played on 6 Whitesnake records.
So like how when you, I imagine when you ask you do that, you do like in your home studio and you send him the finished product, but like because even I gotta tell you, I got this Greatest Hits CD that they just put out last week, And usually you hear bands put out different versions of older songs or remixes. I tell you though, it is so different. It's so much rockier than before.
You can really tell a difference.
Yeah, I mean, like for example, even the song "Slide It In." I mean, the guitar solo is even more extended, but I mean, it does not sound like they're just kind of remixing the track here and there. It is obvious. So talk about it. Adding your keyboard parts to that. Like, what did you do?
Well, they sent me the track and they said, just play, do your thing.
Yeah.
And I didn't, I played basically Hammond B3. I was just being John Lord on these tracks. And then I added Mellotron strings and, anywhere where I could add some John Paul Jones, Led Zeppelin moments, I would do it. But for Whitesnake, I'm not going to do my Derek Sherinian, lead solos because it's not appropriate for his music.
Yeah.
So I just tried to be like the orchestra, the Kashmir guy, and John Paul Jones.
I think you were.
Stuff. And he loved it. Really organic sounds. I used no synthesizer except a Moog, an a vintage Moog, but no digital new keyboards.
Because what I love about these reissues he's been putting out the last several years. I mean, a lot of times a band will just release a new greatest hits album and it's just kind of repackaged or got different tracks here and there, and it's the same old thing. That is not what this is, and I think it's great that you get to be part of that. I mean, I dare anybody put like Slide It In from the original 1984 album on versus the new CD that just came out. It's so, I mean, you can hear the difference, and so you are kind of getting something different, and it's so feeling like you're getting your money's worth. I think people definitely will be getting that.
No, it's cool. Hey, David, he has an amazing back catalog of records, and the way he looks at it, it's by doing the remaster and having the new overdubs on it. It's kind of like giving it a facelift or a paint job or whatever. Yeah, that's cool. That's fine.
Yeah, it really is. And I was reading, in the press release the publicist sent me, who set up the interview today, and I can't say I totally agree. I mean, I think this is really fitting. David Coverdale was quoted as saying that Derek Sherinian plays like the son of John Lord.
I think the actual quote is the illegitimate son of John Lord.
Okay.
But either one is good, and I love it. Are you kidding me? That's David Coverdale from Deep Purple, and he's making that comment.
And he played with the man, so he should know, right? Yeah.
I'll take it. I love it. Thank you, David.
Yeah, in fact, what's funny is because maybe because of my age, I discovered David Coverdale like first when that '87 album came out, like Whitesnake, and it was breaking all over the place. And then I suddenly realized, wait a minute, this is the same singer from that sang on Deep Purple's Burn album. Wow.
Yeah. No, and he's really had a great career.
And in fact, if anybody's a Deep Purple fan, a few years ago, he released this Whitesnake album called the Purple Album, where he totally Whitesnake redoes all of the songs he did with Deep Purple. Just it's a cool collection to have.
I replaced all the keyboards on that original record.
Wow,
that's true. So that's all the new one that'll be coming out. Actually, I shouldn't even be saying it.
Yeah, okay. We'll just leave it.
He'll be announcing it like next year or whatever.
Yeah,
that's all me on that record.
Wow.
And then, they wiped all the other old keyboards off.
Oh, wow. And then another thing I wanted to ask you about, because being a huge Kiss fan myself, I know you played with Kiss on Kiss Alive 3. You want to talk a little bit about that, your memories from that time?
Yeah, it was great. Eric Singer got me in there for the Kiss tour, and it was just the U.S. tour. It wasn't Europe.
Yeah.
And we went out and played, and we recorded a live 3, I think, in Detroit and a couple other cities, and it was pretty awesome because I remember as a kid having the Alive 2 record and loving Kiss, and so to be on Alive, the next live record after that is, it's a little piece of history.
And that's always cool, and I'm sure just having done that one tour and album with them, as you know, like a lot of people find out, just having any kind of association with Kiss, I mean, I'm sure once or twice you've even been asked maybe to even appear like at a Kiss convention or something. I mean, Kiss.
No, I have. I've appeared at one like a long time ago. I mean, it was 10 years ago.
Yeah, but still.
A lot of the Kiss, the Kiss hardcore Kiss fans, they know it's like Star Trek.
Yeah.
They just know all the little details, And they know also that I'm friends with Eric. I mean, it's pretty commonly known.
Yeah. And then the other thing I want to ask you about that, so you did get to tour with the band. From what I understand, that was off stage. So talk a little bit about that, because I know it's a good paying gig. So why not do that? But it's a little different because you're not.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's something that I would never do.
Okay.
Play off stage like that. Only for a couple bands, maybe like Aerosmith, Kiss, or Van Halen, just because I love this band so much. And I wasn't working at the time.
Of course.
Alice wasn't touring, and I looked at it as it was a great opportunity to watch Gene and Paul, how they run the business on tour, and there had to be tons of stuff to learn, and so I accepted
offer, of course.
Tour, and I had a great time, man. Those guys, that was a fun tour, and it was right at the ass end of the hair band, and Seattle was just kicking in, and you know, you could see the doomsday, but there was still like little embers of the past glory and the fun of the yesteryear. So yeah, that was pretty much the very end.
And that was kind of
92.
That was kind of right before Kiss would go back to wearing the makeup. So you were right at the end of that era, you know. So that's but being backstage, I mean, another guy I heard did that for was Robert Mason, you know, who's in Warrant now. He did that for Ozzy, like on the No More Tears tour. But what's that like being off stage? I mean, it's still a gig, so you gotta play your instrument.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, the crowd can't see you.
Yeah.
I'm on the side of the stage behind the PA speaker, so they can. The guys in the band can see me, and I'm like probably chest level to the stage, so they can just see me from my chest up or whatever. And I'm right there, and I'm triggering all the bombs and doubling Paul's guitars and singing background vocals, and I mean, it's weird, you know, not being on stage, but still it's part of the show. I mean,
yeah.
That's a big show, and I served a purpose, and I accepted my role in it, and I nailed my job, you know.
Yeah. Well, I totally agree. Otherwise, you know, you wouldn't have blasted the whole tour. So definitely you fit great as that. So the new CD again called the Vortex, has eight tracks. Are there any other tracks on there that you really kind of dig, that you want to let people know about, that you think are special?
It's all really, I think it's all great, but the one that's really special, there's a piano trio song called Scorpion, which was the newest single, and there's a video out on YouTube. And that song, I think, is really special, and it's getting a lot of really great feedback. And
then I was curious, like, again, because this is instrumental music, so how do you go about like coming up with the title, like the Vortex? That kind of, you know, that comes to mind, or you think of that, or?
Well, it's the most painful process of making an instrumental record, because there's no vocals, there's no lyrics, so
to guide you,
you know, what the hell are you going to call this thing? Unless it evokes a feeling and a title comes up, it's usually ends up where it's me calling Simon going, dude, we have to name these fucking songs because the label needs the deadline in order to get the artwork printed. We need to settle on this stuff. So that's usually how it happens. It's at the very last minute. And then when we post the interview, I'm going to post, because there's also a visualizer for the Vortex and the new video you were mentioning. We'll be sure to post those so people can check them out. And the album comes out next week on the 1st of July. So let me ask you, will people be able to get this, like, physical copies, CDs, or just digitally? What's the process for that? No, it's being released worldwide. You can get it on Amazon, or you can get it on my website directly from me if you want to have it personalized or signed, or I mean, you can get it anywhere. And it's also available on vinyl, and it's streaming, however you want it. They have it. Okay, well, I want to thank you once again, Derek, taking time to talk to me. If you like the way the interview went, let's keep in touch. Anytime you have anything to promote, I'd love to talk to you again. I appreciate that. Appreciate it, Jason. Thank you so much for having me on, and thank you for promoting my record. Oh, sure, anytime. And like I said,
Chaotic Riffs Magazine.